All right. Hello and welcome back to Colonial Outcasts, episode 6. We're going to be talking about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. This is kind of a different tack for us ever since I went live on social media and talking about the situation over there. It's been from the military and geopolitics niche. So we're going to be delving into that for the first time today. I'm joined by co-host Mark Wayne and Zeena Aqel. She is a Palestinian journalist and activist. You grew up in Jordan. Now you're living in the United States.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I think that's all we're going to do for your bio. You're actually pretty well established on social media. We'll link that and your other links in the description below. You don't like compliments. No one does anymore. So we're just going to move right along and begin talking about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. There's a lot of conflicting information. And basically, the media has painted the entire situation, the lack of food, schools being shut down, 1.7 million people internally displaced, kind of with a broad brush so that everybody has the impression that what's going on in North Gaza is identical to what's going on in the quote unquote safe zone in Rafah, which is completely not true, as we talked about last night, and we're going to get into that. So just to catch everybody up on how the media is portraying it, I'm going to play a short clip by I think it's NBC from about 10 days ago. The situation has deteriorated since then, but the general principles, the general circumstances haven't changed. However, this is just, again, a demonstration of how the media is painting this in a broad brush and then with a broad strokes. And then we're just going to jump in. All right, so let me pull this up. All right, sending it.
Tonight, desperation growing, a crowd of displaced Palestinians in Rafah descending on an aid truck. These are familiar scenes now as hunger grips the entire population. Thousands lined up every day to bring food back to their families. Magdi Hussein stands patiently above the crowd. For God's sakes, Magdi says, every time we come, we leave with nothing. Please, he says, I have 25 people at home. But on this day, the food at this distribution point runs out. The World Food Program warns 1 in 4 Gazans are facing emergency levels of food insecurity, and an additional 500,000 are at risk of famine by May.
People are so scared that they don't know where the next meal's coming from.
Children scrape at the bottom of the empty pan, straight into their hungry mouths. And one little boy saving each tiny fingerful to share with his family. Magdi walks 2.5 miles home. There's nothing today, he tells his waiting family. Elsewhere, people are resorting to eating animal feed. We're forced to do this, he says. There's no alternative. Tonight, the Red Crescent says 150 aid trucks are lined up, waiting to get into Gaza. Only 75 entered today, not even close to what's needed. Aid agencies say it's a combination of a lengthy Israeli inspection process, a lawless, chaotic situation inside, and continued Israeli attacks that prevent the aid from getting to the people who need it most. Molly Hunter, NBC News, Jerusalem.
All right, so that's kind of a unprecedented catastrophe, difficult to watch that we're seeing unfold right in real time, not just on the news but on social media. So that was the situation in Rafah. I was wondering if you could, because you've been in touch with multiple people on the ground, journalists, other civilians. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So if we go back to the beginning of the war, this has been an issue where aid trucks have been held at the Rafah crossing and the border, like in hundreds and hundreds of truck. If you remember in the beginning, even like some pressure was some pressure was even from from the Biden administration to get in the aid trucks. But the thing is that because Israel was intentionally holding these people outside of Gaza and making sure no food and no aid is going in. And with a lot of international pressure that happened, the problem is that even the aid that was going in like they were just like everyone was celebrating, like we got 10 trucks in, but those 10 trucks would hold like some kind of like, they will hold coffins, like the fabric ones. They will have COVID like they have COVID supplies. So nobody was talking about the what these actual trucks, contains. And you're talking about millions of people that need aid, and you're bringing in 10 trucks, or maybe, and their needs is around like actually from 100 to 500 trucks. So they kept giving people these kind of like, I would say it's like to numb them, like to calm people down, the public opinion, and to saying, we're getting trucks in, how about you tell us about what these trucks contain? Like, are they actually, do they actually have the basic needs of what these hospitals need, or what these people need inside Gaza in general? um, with the situation, like as you know, of course, in the past 5 months, there has been the separation of areas in Gaza, especially from the north to like the south, and like pushing people from the north all the way down to Khan Yunis, to Rafah, to Deir al-Balah, into like Gaza City. So the north is actually the most affected, because this is where the ground invasion is. And the promotion of the north is empty and everyone became like have left the north is what actually started this whole situation to get a little like a lot worse, because the Israeli army, as you know, they wanted everyone out of the north, right? Because they wanted to do their ground invasion. They wanted to do like their different searches for like whatever like their plan is, because it changes on daily basis. And the basically
Hmm.
600,000 people, from 500,000 people to 600,000 people, are still in the north. So we saw on media this like aggressive footage, and social media as well, aggressive footage of everyone being displaced from the north to the south. We saw them going into what they was that was called like the safe corridors, and like the safe passages, which wasn't safe, and they were shot at. But there was many people, we're talking about over 500,000 people, that decided they don't want to leave the north and they want to stay there. And that's the situation. The problem was in the beginning that these people were saying, we want you guys to stop saying on social media and media that the north is empty. The north is not empty. There's hundreds of thousands of us still right here. So what happened in that situation, because they did not listen to what the Israeli army wanted, you know the collective punishment started. They decided to starve these people. So while like you get a little bit of aid in every place in Gaza, the north specifically did not get any aid for months right now. For months. The first time some aid was entered like few days ago, like a week ago, maybe, if you remember, those trucks that had flour, they had like some kind of a food aid.
Hmm.
They were able, like I think the journalist that I spoke to, he said it's estimated to feed around 5,000 people. That's how much aid got in. So you're talking about months and months of starvation. So when it started, like in the beginning, there's no food. People started,
Yeah.
eating like as you know, like there's different markets. There's I think 3 or 4 different markets. There's like people that has, supplies. Those supplies, like the prices became really, really, really high. Not something anybody like without work and without a job and inside a war can actually afford, because there's no source of income. You're unable to work and bring money. So if you don't have money, you're really basically waiting for someone to feed you at that point. People are like sheltering in hospitals, also don't have access to food. So they basically started counting on the aid that comes from people from outside. They will pay like some kind of let's say uh, those, like they'll pay for someone who has a lot of flour or a lot of rice. Like you will send them personally money, and those people would cook for a huge amount of people, and then they will feed them, and they will buy those supplies. So it became more of like a community effort, because not any single like international help is actually going in. No one is feeding people in the north. Now, that was like, I wouldn't say it was working, but it was a solution for the time being. Then after that, the supply started running out, right? And it's getting more expensive. So you would send $1,000 to those people, and that's not enough for a bag of flour and to make some bread. And you have people who said, like yesterday, one doctor said he hasn't had bread in like 2 months or something. I think we published it on an Instagram reel or something like that, in 2 months. So what people started doing, they started eating like leaves from the trees. They started eating animal feed because they need to make things work. And when the report that you just put, that was from 10 days ago, literally yesterday, when I asked one of the journalists, I'm like, how are things going? What are you guys eating now? He said, basically, Zeena, we are out of animal feed at this point. We're running out because we're using it all to make like some kind of something to eat. And now we're running even out of that. So where is this going? That's the question. We saw some aid entering. We see some aid entering Rafah. We see some aid entering like different areas in Khan Yunis. Like not anymore right now, but like before. But right now, even yesterday, there was an airdrop for some aid in the central and southern like areas in Gaza, not the northern areas. There is nothing coming into the north, and they are literally been sending like they're calling for some help because they are starving. And I can get into like a little bit of more stories about people, but I want to give you space like into like if you want to ask any questions.
Absolutely. So I think, as I said, like before, yes, their starvation tactics are, just part of their whole military operation. It's part of their military plan. And as you said, like leaking starvation rations. They're not even starvation rations because starvation rations still keep you alive. So they're not even leaking in starvation rations into Gaza. It's part of their plan because I've been saying this since the beginning. You can't effectuate a genocide or an ethnic cleansing with conventional weapons. So this is part of their whole thing that they're doing, and they're letting aid trucks in for their information operations so they can look at their supporters and say, oh, look, we do let aid in. I wanted to talk about one of the things that I'm hearing in the north. I just got off the phone with one of my Palestinian American friends who has contacts in the north, and she was saying that the selling of aid is an issue in that area, which is completely expected. This happens since the dawn of war and siege. It's just, it's just the thing that happens, and it's something to be expected. Yeah. So apparently, getting atmospheric reports that people are like arming themselves with like kitchen knives and like old Kalashnikovs and rifles, and basically turning into gangs that take the aid and then sell it for 10x prices, which is of course something we would expect. So I was wondering if you could elaborate.
Yeah, that topic like started like a few weeks ago, where it became more because you can't deny that something like that would happen at any war, at any place. Some people would actually take advantage of a situation. But the thing is, in the north, there is, which was a question I asked a journalist in the north, and he was like, Zeena, there is no aid in the north to sell. But the little things that we got, what's happening with people in the north specifically is they try to say, what's my priority? So some of them would sell the food they get to get a medicine for their children. They will say this is a priority right now. Or some of them will be like, they will get like some rice or whatever, like because we can't say meat and stuff like that. They will get some rice or they will get some bread made out of God knows what at this point. And then they will try to sell that to pay for something else. So that's when the situation is bad because you're trying to survive. And we all know that the basic needs to live it's not exclusively bread and rice and water and exactly. So we don't know what each one of those 600,000 people need at this point. Some Exactly. And like as I said, people are helpful and they help each other, they stand with each other, but also people need to survive. So I've spoken about this to a lot of journalists, and my question was like, why is this happening? And he honestly said, like, we can't deny that some people would actually like become will be greedy in situations like that. But specifically in the north, it's just because of survival instinct. Like, they are trying to survive. It's not like they're getting extra aid and they don't know what to do with it or stuff like that. Like in some places like Rafah, let's say, also, this is like from a different journalist, because again, if we're not on the ground, we barely know what's really going on day, like in every interaction on day-to-day basis. So we try to collect as much data we can from those journalists and those like people in there. And they were saying that basically, uh, like what's happening is you get an aid package from the aid package that you're getting, and then a lot of people would just like, because you have a big number of like in the family, and if you got extra, then you go and sell it. You go and sell it, and then you try to get something else, maybe money to like move from one place to another, because as you know also, those people are on the move all the time. There's no, like, you're not in a stable environment. Like, you want to buy, like, some people will have to buy a tent is like over $300 right now. So for me, I have to, if the way I heard them saying, they'll be like, I have to choose. If I'm going to if I can feed my children, I don't have to eat, maybe I'll buy a tent with that money and then make sure they're sheltered from the rain. So those situations is like, really, honestly, it's heartbreaking, because we can say the general idea is like, everyone is selling aid and everyone is saying that, and I was honestly one of the first people that addressed it. It was really like infuriating for me. I'm like, I was mad at it. I'm like, what is happening? Is there people stealing aid? What's going on? But with those people, those like few people that are doing that, there's a majority that's honestly starving and need a lot to survive and a lot to live. A lot of people want to leave Gaza, and to leave Gaza right now, it's like $11,000 in bribery to someone in the Egyptian on the Egyptian border. So, and it's also not even guaranteed. So you're looking at a situation. It's a war, and you're looking at a situation where you have millions of people stuck inside with with enough food to feed maybe 5% of them, and they're trying to survive in different ways, because those people either sick, either don't have like formulas for their children or diapers or stuff like that. Like, there is so much that they need, and they are unable to obtain at this point, and it's almost impossible. Everyone is unemployed. It's been 5 months. The doctor, the engineer, the nurse, the teacher, everyone has no source of income and no way to live. They all live in the same circumstances and same situations, and they're all trying to find a way to survive. So, and I honestly, this is what I have like for you from the ground. This is like the details, and I know we will hear more stories, and we will be like, we've seen more in the situation, but this is a general, like, what is really happening in different places in Gaza.
So, based on what I'm hearing and based on what I've been studying on this whole situation, I agree with Greg. This is a controlled famine. This is a tactic that was used, in Germany. The Third Reich used to use this. Warsaw Ghetto. Everything about Gaza just rings Warsaw Ghetto, but on a larger scale. The controlled famine making them desperate. There was a method that the Nazis would use against the Jewish people, where they would psychologically terrorize them by starving them and then throwing bread in the middle of a crowd, so that they all fight and kill each other to do that. That was a way of psychologically breaking them down. It wasn't just, using them in slave labor or even exterminating them. They also wanted to break them down psychologically. What Israel's doing, it seems exactly that. They're just drawing from that playbook, of terrorizing them. And I just, and I don't think Americans have any idea, because they see the headlines of aid trucks finally go into Gaza. They don't know how many aid trucks. They don't understand how many aid trucks are required to feed that population. And you mentioned it was like 10 trucks would come in a day at one time, where it requires 500 to feed that size of a population. So I think it's really important what you're saying, because Americans don't have that metric perspective of what is required to feed that many people in that small. They just see the headline, and it gives. And when I talk to people who have no idea what's going on, and maybe they're leaning towards the pro-Israel side of things, they said, "Well, no, look, what kind of, well, they're a moral army. What kind of army feeds their enemy and allows aid to go to their enemy? That just shows you how moral they are.
And that
But
just
then,
shows you how the media is a complicit in all
yeah,
of this, because how
yes,
I'm framing things does
mhm,
affect the public opinion. And that's what's always been the issue, is
yeah,
that the controlled public opinion, specifically of Americans, because I want to tell Americans that we're doing everything we can to keep people alive in Gaza.
yeah,
So after months and 5 months of starving people in the north, I'm not sure, I think it was 10 aid trucks that just entered the north. And I'm going to have them not even fully loaded,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And then I'm going to let people gather around those food, like all these trucks, like you said in that scene. And then I'm going to have snipers shoot at them.
yep.
And then just let the whole world watch them and just kind of have them fight over it. Because again, survival instinct, like, it's like people are judging the scenes they're seeing. And I'm like, what would you do if you were starved in an open air prison?
I
Would
mean,
you find-
if Americans shut down Starbucks, we're already eating each other in the next 3 days. So we have no idea what they're going through. Like, I'm looking at the Gazans. Holy shit. They are, in my opinion, they're the most badass people on the planet. To watch them keep their composure and try to comfort their children and working together despite literally starving to death and being shot at. Americans would lose their mind if Walmart shut down tomorrow. So we're judging this from a whole another perspective, and I don't know. It's
One of the journalists, his name is Ismail Al Ghul. He is in the north along with two more journalists
yeah,
over there, which is like there's like almost none. If we would just count, like there's 3, 4, few journalists over there. He was telling me a story where they were able to obtain some rice, and they cooked the rice and they were eating it, all like the journalist groups. And he said, as they were finishing their food, they had a little bit extra rice, and they saw a child walking, in the area. So they were like, "We have extra," so they gave that child some rice. He's like, few minutes later, we had tens and tens of children coming to where we are because that child took the rice, ran over there, and then we
yeah,
had tens of children, and they were like, "You guys give away rice? We're starving."
yeah,
He it breaks my heart saying this. I'm a mother. I have a 7-year-old.
yep,
Knowing that fathers and mothers have to tie like stones and rocks around their children's stomachs and tighten it to make them to give that feeling that they're full,
Jesus,
so their children can sleep.
Jesus Christ,
I am not even exaggerating. And it's been a tactic that was used in the war before. I've heard those stories from my grandmother about how things were, they had to survive at a certain point. There's like nonstop crying.
yep,
Right before we went on this stream together, I read that few months old, like it was like I think a 3 months old baby just died out of starvation. Because if you think about it, those mothers, like there's ways to nourish a baby, right? Like either breastfeeding or formula. At that age, they can't eat solid food, their body can't process it. So if I have a starving mother without good health, she's not going to be able to breastfeed. She's not going to be able to give nutrition to those children, because she
yeah,
doesn't like breastfeeding takes out of your soul as a woman. So if you're not eating, you're unable to breastfeed. If you're starving, you're unable to do that. And there is no formula. So there's children that are being born into the war, like, and they're dying just because
yep.
there is there's no way to feed them. Like they're out of solution. There's no way to feed them. There is
And their
not.
mothers aren't taking any nutrition anyways if they're breastfeeding, so they have no nutrition to give them from their own bodies.
And they're unable, like, and it's so easy to lose the ability to breastfeed if you're lucky, like to be able to breastfeed, and you've made that choice. And obviously in the war everyone is trying to make that choice. But if your body, like, that's how our bodies work, that's how women bodies work. If you're going to be producing milk for those children, your body needs to be able to make it, and to be able to make it, you need good nutrition. Like literally mothers around the world, if they want to breastfeed, they go on like this high protein diet to be able to provide like children
Yeah,
with there is not even protein. One of the stories that also I would like for you guys to know, people were saying that we're eating the tree leaves, and like, or from the fields, they're trying to just get like whatever green leaves they can find and cook them and eat them. And part of our culture is like there's a lot of food that actually started from the war. The stories go back to like, this was the war and we found this plant and we started cooking it. But there's plenty that you can't even eat, but they're trying to eat it. And they said the Israeli army actually bulldozed all these trees and like all these green areas to make sure that people don't even get to that, don't even have access to that.
Yeah. And that has everything to do with Hamas, by the way. Bulldozing trees has everything to do with Hamas.
Yeah,
because
100%.
we all know that Hamas uses these leaves against Israelis.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point to like bring it back to one of the reasons like I definitely wanted to get into this aspect is, they have this narrative where they, again, starvation rations. They've constructed this narrative where they're starving the people because Hamas takes the aid, which from a military perspective
Absolutely.
makes no sense because Hamas has prepared for this for years. They have prepared for a siege. They have stockpiles of food, and no resistance movement in history has prioritized civilian suffering over military priorities. That's just a fact, and it's all that everyone has to recognize. And it's also a fact that yes, there will be some thug criminals going around stealing aid, threatening people out of it, and then reselling it for 10x. That happens too. That's
just like the Warsaw Ghetto.
Yeah, and yeah, and that's why I wanted to come back to that. It's because they've constructed this situation intentionally so that there will be lawlessness and there will be like sociopaths and people who take it, like band together with other like-minded individuals to form little gangs and do this. And so then the IDF can sit back with their propaganda machine and say like, huh, look, these people steal from each other. They won't like take care of each other. They're just a bunch of like rabid animals. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, when you put someone on starvation rations, you bomb the shit out of them for like almost 6 months now, and you destroy all civilian infrastructure. That's what's going to happen. But that is their military doctrine, to put pressure on civilians to deprive them of everything and hope that the people that they actually are fighting, who they don't want to fight, give up and surrender. But it didn't work in 2006. It didn't work in 2014 during Operation Protective Edge. It's never worked because it's not actually about winning a military campaign. It's about ethnic cleansing. And I don't think there's any logical way, looking at what's happening in Gaza, to argue against that. And so, and one of their biggest coups that I definitely wanted to talk about was they have been trying to delegitimize and defund UNRWA for decades. So if you could tell us about the consequences of that, not just with the food and the aid, but like schools,
honestly,
the whole thing.
As you said, for decades. So this is not new. They've always been trying to find a stage to defund the UNRWA and, just completely end the role to what they do to the Palestinian people and Palestinian refugees in the Middle East and around the world. This is like has been always a huge focus for Israel for multiple reasons. So if we're going to think about what UNRWA does, it doesn't just provide food. It provides food, it provides education, like emergency relief in case of like something like that what's happening in Gaza, and also like some healthcare, like vaccinations, the things that are needed for, like, I would say the basic needs for refugees to survive in the world. And they have a huge role in Gaza as well, because as we know, like maybe UNRWA has like over 700 schools that has like in different Palestinian refugee camps around the world, and there's like around 280 schools for UNRWA inside Gaza. So they provide education. So if you think about it, like Trump was one of the people that actually in 2018 that defunded the UNRWA. He took like the hundreds of millions that the US was giving to UNRWA, and was actually like the statement he made that day that he made the statement, he made it to the Jewish leader in the US. There was like pressure from the Israeli lobby at the time, and he responded with cutting the UNRWA fund. And the things that like the argument that he used is really different from what we hear today. It's always been a way, like there's always been, let's find a way to defund the UNRWA. But at the time he was saying that they are the reason, like the pressure was like because they're the reason that these refugees maintain their status like as refugees in around the world, like Palestinian refugees. And honestly, it's the international law that makes them refugees. It's not the UNRWA. The UNRWA helps them. But the whole idea is if I defund the UNRWA, those people will not have any help, right? And they become, I wouldn't say the problem, but they become the responsibility of the hosting country. And now they have to be given certain rights and certain, any funding, everything has to become part of those countries. And what did you just take away? Their right to ever return, right? Because they stop being refugees. Like they can't, they will hold like that kind of like Israel would not have to worry about them because as an occupier, they have a legal obligation to make sure that these people, like there's a legal application, the word is gone.
It's
There's a
okay.
legal obligation for Israel to make sure that these people, the people they're occupying, right, are safe, and they are actually like providing them with the basic needs and all these things, correct? And so the UNRWA's problem is always been, from the US perspective, as a peacemaker, is just to like make things really harder for Palestinians, take away all their help, the help they get, and just have them in a situation where they're someone else's problem.
I just wanted to restate that one point because it's something I haven't heard yet, and it's something I hadn't considered. That UNRWA in foreign refugee camps is a mechanism that retains some semblance of a grasp on a Palestinian's right of return.
They have no home. Like they have no home. They maintain a status like they're refugees.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't considered that. Also, I wanted to make the point that defunding schools and education and systemized education is another mechanism by which to deprive someone of a way to resist in a more sophisticated manner.
So the UNRWA does a lot of work when it comes to education and a lot of that. But honestly, that idea of making those people like we just don't want like Palestinian refugees outside. We don't want people in the diaspora. Like like all the Palestinians outside of Palestine are a problem. Has always been a problem to Israel. Has always been a problem to everyone that does not want that what is trying to create this kind of a state where Palestinians are whoever is not in there, and you can't control with like you can terrify with machine guns, and you can terrify with checkpoints and like approvals to enter a country or leave. All these things that just they're out of their control because they're not inside the like Palestine. So there's always been a war against UNRWA. And in 2021, when the funding was returned by Anthony Blinken out of everyone else, they said they wanted like they want to return those funds. They think that there's a big role for the UNRWA and like the whole like relationship with the with Palestinians that they're working on. And they said we are returning the funds, correct? And then suddenly now, based on allegations, not even a concluded investigation, based on allegations that there is like corrupt employees that had some kind of a role in what was that, and it wasn't even proven until now. They decided to take away the funds from UNRWA just because, like, in the U.S. Army, let's say, if you have some corrupt like soldiers, would that means the whole army is corrupt? It's just insane.
No, we actually, all the soldiers that stole gold and money from Saddam's palace actually went to jail. So we
But
did not
that
defund the
that's my
entire
point.
U.S. military. But I would like to make, yeah. I would like to make the point, though, that there's been a lot of policy 180s since October 7th. Like, yeah, they restored funding to UNRWA, and then now they've completely taken away based off of unproven allegations, even like weak allegations. A couple employees, not only have they done that, but they failed to prove that they had any substantive role in the October 7th attack. Also, with the Houthis, the Biden administration took away their foreign terrorist organization designation, which allowed aid to return to Yemen and outside investment and a bunch of economic stimulus bonuses, essentially. And then when they started blocking Red Sea traffic through the Suez Canal, they were hit back with another terrorist label, not as a global terrorist organization, which is different from the FTO designation, but still, it's another policy 180. So I think, like, if you cause problems for the administration and the imperialist system that it promotes, what was given can
Exactly.
be taken
What
away.
we reverse from Trump, like what Trump has taken away, we will give it back. But if now everything that they have changed since Trump was president, they have literally went back to the same things. All we're expecting, what's next? Like the Muslim ban again? Like, I don't know. This is the only thing that they haven't done yet.
Yeah, and it was like 12. The accusation was there's 12 members of UNRWA who were working with Hamas. And by the way, all the members that work for UNRWA in the Gaza Strip have to submit that list, that roster to Israel for them to background check. So if there even was 12 that worked for Hamas, were family. I mean, Gaza is interconnected. So yeah, you're going to have a cousin who has a cousin who knows a friend who's Hamas, most likely. So it's ridiculous in and of itself, but they, like Greg said, they didn't prove it. So 12 employees now it sabotages it for how many workers are employed by UNRWA in Gaza? Like, was it 5,000, 3,000?
Yeah, thousands and thousands of people. I don't have the exact accurate numbers, but they serve like hundreds and thousands of Palestinian around the world. And in Gaza specifically, they have a very, very important role, because the majority of schools and elementary schools, especially for elementary schools, are from UNRWA. So this is basically, they are trying to make sure also that the situation in Gaza, even after the war, stays
dire,
like where people can't live there.
So the attack on UNRWA is basically just the attack on humanitarian aid. If it was another organization, they would have done the same thing. If this was Red Cross and they were the ones supplying most of the aid in Gaza, they would go after Red Cross in some type of way. They would accuse Red Cross. So this has nothing to do with them worrying about any employees of UNRWA working for Hamas. It has everything to do with just attacking the aid mechanism, which they get, on a daily basis.
I would like to point out one more layer of absurdity about these accusations that I've been thinking about, and that's just when people think Hamas, they think about the Al Qassam brigades. Like 30,000 dudes, maybe 40,000. I think it's more like 30,000. But Hamas also has an entire government wing. It is a de facto functioning non-state government that even has like student organizations and stuff like that. So when you say they're trying to condense Hamas into this, no matter what you think about them, it's not just a military element. There are far more.
It would be the equivalent of the Republican Party. If the Republican Party had members that committed an atrocity or committed a terrorist attack, then every single member or anybody who's ever identified with the Republican Party is now a terrorist. That's the equivalent. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Yeah. So exactly. So it's not just about aid. Like when you just the report this month came and it was 378 schools in Gaza that were destroyed. That's 378 schools. This is just to destroy and damage schools that aggressively. What's your excuse? Because it's easy. So the whole and when it comes to UNRWA schools and schools in general, like when you want to attack an UNRWA school, you're gonna get lashback, right? It's like a UN like a school. You can't go near that. So they needed justification to do so. So these allegations, the number of like 11 and 12, and then there was 4, and then there's 2 were dead, and then 1 was it like even found. The number even of the people they have suspicions over who is involved keeps changing. And we haven't even seen anything since then. But what did we see since then? More bombing of schools. Justification. Because again, all I care about is making sure and it is really upsetting, and I'm going to say that, and I honestly, I might regret saying it, but obviously, all that this world needs to justify killing of children, women, and men, innocent civilians, is if someone says there was a Hamas operator there. As soon as you say that, it's like, oh, okay.
Yep.
300 people
Just toss it in. Just toss in the terrorist designation. Boom. You can justify anything.
And as soon as you say it, everyone is okay with what's happening.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know how to feel about that, because
well, it goes to show like
about anybody at this point.
Whatever.
Yeah. Well, you should.
Who's speaking first? You two got quiet. I'm like, okay.
Handoff. You have to understand that this narrative about terrorism has been. Yeah. No, this narrative about terrorism has been building for some time. It's become comfortable, like old leather. It's existed since 2001. And then you have narrative through lines where you're connecting October 7th to September 11th. Terrorism's the threat. It's not imperialism. It's not, the destructiveness of our own governmental systems that screws everybody else over, their own citizens over, but wants to send another $60 million to Ukraine for a war that's probably already lost. It's anything to not challenge the powers that be, as Aaron Bushnell said, the ruling class. Terrorism. Now that the USSR and communist China are no longer a Cold War threat, we need a new thing. We can't just call everybody communists anymore. So terrorism is the new thing to justify Western action in the global South.
This whole situation is answering an age-old question that I'm sure all of us have asked ourselves when we were in history class. We learned about the Holocaust. We learned about, the lynching of Black people in the Deep South, the massacre of the Native Americans. We're answering that question right now of what would I do if I was living back then. All of us like to think of ourselves as righteous men. Like, oh, if I was there, I would have stopped it. I would have stood up. If I was a German living in Germany, I would have gone to the concentration camps and, fucked up some Nazis and let them free. So we all ask ourselves and imagine that when we're learning these stories. And we've always like, what would I do in that situation? Well, I'd be the righteous one. Well, this is exactly how you're able to do that. We're in a situation where you're having a genocide, and the excuse to execute it is packaged up in the form of terrorism. Back then, with the Jews, it was saying, "Oh, they're a disease to the culture, and they're ruining our economy." And it was kind of very similar, except it wasn't terrorism. Black people, same thing. Black people were accused, "Oh, they're going to rape your women." Native Americans were accused of savages. So you always have to find an angle to package it to get the population, complacent with their conscience. Like, just pacify their conscience, give them something, give them a little bread for their conscience, and then we can do it. And so that question is being answered in real time. The difference is it's in real time. It's on our phones every day, through social media.
Yeah, what would you do during a genocide? You're literally doing it right now.
And I mean,
we would punch a Nazi. That's what we would do. We would kill the Nazis. It's like,
no, you join the Nazis, but because the level of cognitive dissonance isn't just about history; it's also about like fantasy too. The other day I saw, I'm sure most people are familiar with the Star Wars franchise, like on a bumper sticker, like a Rebel Alliance bumper sticker, and then on the other side, like I stand with Israel, and I'm just like, what? Like, you're totally cool with resistance movements as long as it's like science fiction or fantasy. But when it really comes down to it,
I think Princess Leia would have some thoughts about that bumper sticker.
I think we've addressed the double standards in the world, and when it comes to resistance, many, many, many times, and we've heard that happen multiple times. I've engaged in enough conversation at this point. I was just telling a friend, I'm like, I'm done debating. And they were like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm just done. I'm done until further notice because I just
Mhm.
can't debate anymore because
It
I
gets
just
overwhelming. It's like there's so
yeah."
many facts that it's like you don't even know where to start. You don't
Ex-
even know where to start. It's like,
and the,
here's a stack of books. Just start fucking reading it. Watch these videos. I don't know what to tell you.
and you get questions like, "Where is?" Someone
I
will be
just
like,
They're not
"So
going to
you
read the
guys
books.
don't want peace?" No, we you want peace because you want to move on with your life and you want your Amazon packages to get on time according
want
to.
your Starbucks, your
But
Starbies.
we want justice. Like what
Mhm.
else? What else? Bring it on. And they will ask me questions. They were like, "But how could they elect a government like Hamas?" I was like, "You guys elected Trump. You can't."
You guys elected Bibi Netanyahu. You
I'm
guys
like, "What?"
elected. You guys put in power Ben Gvir. Like, do you guys know
Yeah,
who that
so
is? Did
many,
you guys
so many,
research who Ben?
so
Yeah,
many, so many
yeah.
arguments. It's just exhausting. Like I can't debate anymore, honestly, because as again, the justification of it all. But there is a point that's really important. Just because before we move on from this, we've been prepared. They've been prepping. I would say they've been prepping the American public for over like I want to say I'm just gonna go 50 years or maybe
Mhm.
7 years.
Mhm.
We've always looked at the US as a target. Like whether it's China, whether it's Russia, in movies, right? In media, every movie, the US is always targeted by Russia, by the aliens. They're always coming to DC or New York. Like there's no other place. And we're always in the center of it. I'm like, they looked at no other locations. Are you sure?
Yeah.
We've always sold fear to the American people,
Yeah.
not us, but like they've always been like told that like that's just we're always scared, we're always targeted. Everyone wants to get us, the whole world, right? And the
You always
terrorists
have that
is
old.
always
You got the old people in their couches, like, oh goddamn, we got Al Qaeda coming for us.
and the target like and the enemy is always the same person. He's
Yeah.
either Arab or
Mhm.
he's either like recently they started mixing it up between Chinese and Russian, but it's always been the Middle Eastern. And I'm like, it's fascinating because
There
he does
always has to be a boogeyman. I call it the boogeyman tactic. Always have a boogeyman, and then have the saviors that come and protect you from the boogeyman.
this.
And yeah, we're making it. We're turning a corner though. Finally, thank God. But what we're seeing in the United States. I think is that remnant of these old fucks who are just buying all the propaganda, who just swallow everything, and they're sitting on their couches like, I don't understand why everybody's supporting these terrorists with their Palestinian flags. It's like that's how simple they think.
Yeah. Okay. I want to show you before we move on from this one of the most egregious articles about Aaron Bushnell that came out. Of course, it's from the Jerusalem Post, but
Don't
there
read
are a lot
that.
of Americans who actually read the
Send it. No, no, no.
Jerusalem
Send it.
Post.
Send it.
I have to. It's part of my
We're locked
opposition
and loaded. Go ahead.
research. All right. Okay. And you know how we said last night in our episode that they have to try and paint white people as crazy because they can't do it. They can't call us terrorists. Well, guess what? Some people are
They will
trying.
choke on that
All right.
word, calling a white person a terrorist. They're like, they just have mental health issues.
I Okay, so first of all, we've
Of
got
course.
gold ring advertisement. I don't know what that's for. Okay, Jerusalem Post. Praise of Bushnell's self-immolation puts U.S. closer to
Oh my
suicide
God.
bombings.
What?
Extremists are threatening to. Okay, extremists are threatening to set the mentally vulnerable alight and normalize
Greg, it's too early in the
political
morning for this
violence
shit, man.
I know.
in America.
You need more coffee. You need more
Come on. Give us a
Hey,
day. Give us a day.
I'm in Texas. It's technically 12. It's 12:07 p.m. for me, so I can show that now for myself. But yeah, so when people are mobilizing the term terrorist, it's basically dangerously losing all its meaning, just like
Yo.
anti-Semitism as an accusation is losing all of its meaning because they
Oh.
use these words like a cudgel, terrorist. Terrorist. There was a terrorist in the school, so we need to bomb the shit out of it. But I think, especially the younger generations, like the millennials, Gen Z, definitely like kids and Gen A, no longer give like a flying fuck about the word terrorist because we use it so casually and arbitrarily. It's like, yeah, you know what? We've proven that in Yemen, the U.S. has employed Al Qaeda leadership that was directly responsible for bombing the USS Cole pre 9/11 and killing American sailors. But they work for us now. So
I think
what does terrorism
when it
really
got
mean
leaked
anymore?
that the feds had put a lot of the ex special forces vets on the terrorist watch list, I think at that point people were like, all right, these guys are full of shit. Like that's what did it. I think it was a veteran thing when they put them on a list.
Yeah.
The issue is just the fabrication of lies that's always been fed to the American people. Was it almost 1,000 lies that was like fed to the American people to justify a war in Iraq, and then the media was complicit. The White House just lies, and everyone just like takes up whatever they're saying. Biden said while he was eating an ice cream cone last night, it should be the beginning of the weekend or the end of the weekend that we're going to get a ceasefire. He's not sure, because he's planning a barbecue or something. I'm like, he just said that yesterday as he was eating ice cream around an ice cream shop. Who saw that video?
Yeah. No, I didn't see it. I don't want to see that. Wait, did he know it was an ice cream cone? I thought his dementia got to the point where he didn't know how to eat anymore. I mean, that's...
We did. All right. Yeah. So, he was talking about a ceasefire. I don't know. I don't believe anything he says, because you've got Bibi Netanyahu saying we are going to begin a completely operationally unviable assault on Rafah during the month of Ramadan. So there's just a lot of conflicting narratives. I don't know if he's trying to be like, oh, I can still win in Dearborn, Michigan.
He said he wasn't even sure. He's like, either at the beginning of the weekend or by the end of this weekend. I'm like, that's two different massacres that they can.
Yeah. And I have a problem. I'm going to tell you something. From the beginning of this, I always had a problem with the word ceasefire, and I'll tell you why. Because it gives the impression that there's fighting, that this is a war going on between two equal sides. It's a famine. This is a controlled famine. This is a siege. This is a genocide. So whenever we say ceasefire, okay, let's say there's a ceasefire. Israel stops bombing. They stop shooting. That doesn't fucking matter, because you still have the blockade of aid trucks. Now you have famine to deal with. So I don't get excited when I hear the word ceasefire. I don't. It doesn't bring me hope, because I know that, okay, they will stop the bombing at some point. But at that point, it's just going to be it's the new strategy is going to be, how can we starve these people while keeping it slightly a secret as much as possible? How can we give the impression that things are over and we're allowing aid in while at the same time squeezing it? And that brings me to a point I wanted to talk to you about: these settlers and the Israeli protesters that are blocking the aid. Can we go into that a little bit and how that's affected things?
So basically, we've seen the footage. That's with this is part also of the failing PR campaign, that the issue is only with Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the bad man, and nobody else wants bad things for Palestinians, right? And it's just Netanyahu, because they want to convince you that the moment Netanyahu is not the prime minister anymore, the problem
we're all holding hands.
Yeah, it's a tactic. They always do that. It's easier to do that. But no, it's the whole government. It's a whole I would say it's every single person that's okay with what's happening in Palestine in different areas, whether it's in Jerusalem, whether it's in the West Bank or in Gaza. It's not just one person, and it's not just Netanyahu, and that needs to be known, because people were trying to promote also is people inside Israel, they don't agree to what's happening. Settlers don't agree. Settlers know exactly what's happening. They have agreed to it, and they have been part of what's happening to Palestinians for years now. This is not something new. They are not walking around being all innocent like everyone's trying to tell you. You've seen them. They carry their rifles to go shopping at the mall, or they will be walking around assaulting Palestinians, doing whatever they want. And at the end of it, now what we've seen recently, they are literally standing, blocking aid from going into Gaza.
And what are they saying? What are they saying when they're doing that? They're saying, why stop feeding our enemy, right?
Stop feeding the enemy.
And they say terrorist, and they say the word Hamas, because they don't want to just man up and say, we want to starve those people, all of them in there. They always have to throw in the word terrorist. They always put that word terrorist in there. Yeah.
But they call all Arabs
Some do.
terrorists. Some do.
Yeah.
Just like, but they call. But again, like it's like part of those videos that come out, and they know that how much these videos are gonna hurt their narrative and what they're like the false narrative they're trying to promote. So they try to kill and eliminate those videos, and it's easily done because when you say we want to kill all Arabs, like someone can just like basically report that video and you won't see it. Me and you won't see it, especially in this region with all the restrictions and bans that are happening on social media, where videos are not really getting to us easily, except when we collaborate from someone from that region, because they don't want to they don't want these type of content to cross. And we both know the Jerusalem Post is not gonna put that, because they're not gonna publish those kind of videos. They're not gonna tell you how they call Arabs terrorists and how they chant death to all these people, and how they would spit on them in the street, and how they would insult them, and what they call our women, and how they try to cross the boundaries on every day, and how they are like mobs. They're literally like mobs in Jerusalem. I have a great aunt that lives in Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah. They're like mobs. You can't, and they are protected by the Israeli army. So he will have a weapon and an army, and they are like, he will insult you, and you can do nothing about it. Because once you react, you're the terrorist.
And it's a really good strategy that Israel uses. What they'll do is, especially with the settlers. The settlers are a great way of doing pogroms without it tracing directly back to the IDF or the Israeli government, and so you get these psychotic settlers who are literally the most deranged people on the planet that literally emigrate there just to form settlements. They give them weapons, tell them to, hey, go have fun, and because it's a settler, because it's a citizen, it's not technically a government, a government official, government worker, or an IDF soldier. They can do whatever they want, and they have the protection of the IDF. And if the Palestinians try to fight back, it's like, oh, you're attacking our civilians. Now we got to step in. So, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, but just to add, where is the settlers that are against this? If the argument is it's just the government and the settlers don't have any issues with the fellow Palestinians, why are there no settlers standing against the ones who are blocking aid? Why they're not there? Because it's just what they want, what they want everyone to believe, that everyone lives in peace and Hamas just disturbs the peace. There is no peace in Palestine. There hasn't been peace ever.
Yeah, there is one thing I wanted to say about the settlers. It's that they're organized into militias. They're in some kibbutzes, there's like rank structures. There's like, I don't know exactly what the Hebrew words are, but there's a guy in charge, and they're like lieutenants, and they do drills, and they have military weapons. So if you exist within an organizational structure and you have military equipment, on the most basic definition, that makes you a paramilitary fighter. So a lot of these kibbutzim that were attacked are actually paramilitary targets. The fact that, because you have Minister Ben-Gvir giving out American designed and Israeli made assault rifles to civilians so they can protect themselves, and they train on IDF facilities. We've seen videos of them doing this. They're paramilitary. They are valid targets. And the fact that women and children live in the kibbutzim, it's because Israel uses human shields.
Right, but here's what's interesting about the kibbutzim that were attacked on October 7th, right? A month prior, they had disarmed those communities and pushed them up to the settlers in the West Bank to make sure, in my opinion, this is my little tinfoil hat, to make sure that there's the maximum amount of death toll during October 7th. So they were disarming the ones, and I believe the ones in that area were mostly, they weren't like the settlers up in the West Bank. So they disarmed those and shipped them up to the West Bank, to the psychotic ones. So it left those guys exposed during October 7th. So there's a lot of arguments about this going on in Israel about why that happened. But anyways, just a little side note.
There's a lot that has no explanation. But also what's interesting is that CNN was running stories about how many of those settlers in the kibbutzes, and they like farmers, and a lot of those Palestinians from Gaza was working for them. And it must have been a terrifying experience when, someone who works for you and you have a good relationship. Focus on this one. There's like they have like good relationship with that Gazan person, and then suddenly like one day on October 7th, that became like their that person became like the attacker on them.
Mhm.
What is that? I was
Yeah.
like, what? And
Yeah.
literally someone was like actually addressing that. They were like, what, how, like, imagine working for someone and suddenly like deciding one day to get up and like and murder them. I'm like, is
Yeah.
this what CNN telling you?
Yeah. 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 A lot of funny business, a lot of little monkey
A
business going on
lot
with
of
that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Mark is our designated conspiracy guy, and I am the
To an
Well,
designated
no, no,
extent.
no, no. It's not
anti-conspiracy
To an
about
guy.
extent.
So
conspiracy and anti-conspiracy, but just to be honest, like he has a point when it comes to like why are they that close to the Gaza, like to the siege, to the wall that they built? Like they put them in the range of like they're so close. There's like some things that doesn't make sense, except that all these arguments about human shields were they projecting? But I also try not to overshare conspiracy theories so people don't think I'm
yeah,
crazy.
Well, there's a difference between conspiracy theory and just things happening.
yeah, we
Okay.
have military documents from like in the U.S. military that I can put in Telegram describing kibbutzim as intentionally constructed bulwarks against invasion,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
first line defense. And the fact that it's not a military
It's
unit that's considered
civilians.
the first line of
Civilians.
defense, but a civilian
Yeah.
paramilitary unit that's first line of defense. So you'll see kibbutzim like on borders of like Jordan. Yeah, it's civilians who are armed being the first line of defense because then it gives them retroactive casus belli, cause for war, to really
Yeah,
just
in case of any reaction or retaliation, you attacked a civilian. It's super easy. Like that's the first instinct. And then you can justify a genocide. And while the whole world will just use your stupid arguments day to day, I'm like, I get it. Like every single time there's a justification that is more stupid than the one before. Like if you remember the whole Shifa hospital in the north, and there was like all these conversations and justification of that hospital. But have we talked about all the other hospitals they have bombed or they
Yeah.
have attacked, they raided and killed? Like,
No, Hamas was all in all those hospitals though. They set up their headquarters in the OR rooms, and
no,
that's
like it was the MRI room where you can't have any metal. Like,
No, I would like to explain Israel's PR strategy. So what they do is before they push a violation of war crimes, they build up to it. So remember the weeks preceding the attack on Al Shifa Hospital, they did this massive news media push, and they showed infographics about like Hamas people walking in tunnels. They showed the Hamas command and control center inside Al Shifa Hospital. They even had like where the desk was. They had like the big room that was had computers and stuff. And they primed the public for it. So when they finally hit Al Shifa Hospital, the average Joe Schmo dumbass was like, "Well, yeah, they
and then Ahud
found
Barak
it."
went on
And
CNN and said he built them.
so that
they built them back in the 80s. They
And then
they
Ahud
actually
Barak
built.
literally legit went on and
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, we built them. And then they changed the question and like, yeah, we know they're there. I'm like, we've been following you guys. We know you were wondering if there is.
Yeah. So basically, what happened was that once they got away with it, they watched and they saw what the world reaction was. People were like, "Oh, it's really bad, but like we're not going to put any pressure on you." So once they achieved that, they got license to bomb all the hospitals because their PR objective was checkbox, it's achieved. And they've done that with other things. They've done that with evacuating entire neighborhoods with like leaflets and text messages on cell phone networks, which are not even fully functioning. They bombed a refugee camp. They said it was Hamas, and now they've bombed multiple refugee camps because it's all about getting away with the first big one.
And now it's being applied, the same tactic, and maybe a more aggressive one is being applied to holding aid out of Gaza. Because, if I promote enough that Hamas is stealing aid or people are selling
Yes.
aid, and then you might want to think twice before giving money to Gaza, because all these little details that will go and play. And then you hear on the news like, yeah, 8 trucks are going in, while those 8 trucks have nothing, like not enough for people. Then you're going to continue on seeing people starving, and we're going to continue on seeing people dying now, right now. I have never in my life seen people I know watch them lose weight like so aggressively. Their faces are tired. They're exhausted.
Yeah.
They're exhausted, and like they are just trying to justify starving them more and more. And they won't even allow, like, what drives me insane, that there's like diplomatic relationships between, let's say, Jordan and Israel, right? And they were able to drop aid to Gaza yesterday. Some of it went to the sea, and like the fishermen went and got it.
Yeah.
But why not the north? Those are people too. And honestly, and then everyone has that question, because I had it and I asked it. And I asked those people a lot of people in the north, and I said, why won't you leave the north if it's that bad at this point? Like, why don't you just go south? Like, you need to survive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of them, they're like, we don't want to leave our homes, and we don't want to leave. We don't want to surrender that way. We'd rather die. But at the same time, what you don't understand, chances are if we leave, they would kill us anyway.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that you're going to survive going south. Like, and I've been hearing that towards the beginning they were like, "Well, just move south." Well, they're sniping people on the streets. Who's to say that your child is not going to take a bullet? It's like, no. You can go to the end of that street right there. I guarantee you there's food. But meanwhile, all along the street, there's little snipers that may pick off your kid. What are you going to do? It's go ahead. Sorry, Greg.
No. That's a great point, and it leads into my last question that we kind of talked about in our phone conversation before the episode. It's the daily experience of civilians with Israeli soldiers.
Yeah, they set up like it's like checkpoints between, like, when they raid like an area, they have people moving from one place to another, from Khan Yunis to Rafah. This is the most recent one, the most spoken about experience, where we don't see a lot of footage of it because you're not allowed to take videos. You're not allowed to show us what's happening. But basically, they will destroy the road to make sure it's like super hard for you to walk. So you're not just hungry. You're hungry, you're tired, you don't sleep, you're cold, you don't even take a medication, and you're walking on a road that's completely destroyed. And they will make detours, like, instead of walking in a straight line, because you can walk in a straight line, they will make you go around buildings to make it a little longer, and like triple the distance and all that. And you can keep walking while there's drones and snipers. And they will literally randomly pick who they want to take, because they don't have intelligence. It's not like, oh, we know who we're looking for, like it's facial recognition. No. It's just about, like, what I've heard from those people. They were like, we try not to make eye contact because it's just this soldier. He can just do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
I'll be walking by him, and he just can decide he doesn't like me, and he will just take me. And chances are they don't know if they're going to return. Chances are they'll be detained. Some people were detained like 50 days. Some people were detained for a few hours. Some people were detained for months. Some people, they're still detained till this moment, and we don't know anything about them. But the stories you're hearing about the people they're taking, the starvation in the north, the starvation everywhere in Gaza, is nothing to compare to being taken by the Israeli army. They make sure they are all like, they make sure they strip them naked. It's cold weather, just so everyone knows. It's not like a tropical nice weather area. It's the same. If you look up the weather, it's very similar to what we have right here. We all saw the person that was just like going down. So it's, yeah, I know. I'm gonna repeat
we'll cut that out. Yeah,
I'm gonna repeat that because he was like, I'm like, we can see you. There's no point. It could have just walked straight.
That was Hamas. Yeah. That looked like Hamas to me.
They found it was Hamas. There's a list behind you anyway. So basically, what I was saying, so basically Gaza is really cold. It's the winter over there, and it's not a warm area,
Yeah.
and people are cold. So when you're being taken by the Israeli army and you're detained, they make sure they strip you naked, they
Yeah.
beat you. There is a lot of conversations about like the kind of like sexual harassment that happens to those detainees. And I need to make sure that you guys understand one thing: it is really hard for someone from our culture to speak openly about that.
Yeah. Yep.
So I know that. And I'm not saying it as it's just how the culture is. I've lived my whole, like, the first part of my life in the Middle East. I know exactly how our men, our women think. It's really hard. It's not something easy to be open about and speak about it. So those who are actually saying things, it's very difficult. And many of them, these things will happen to them and they will not even disclose it. They will not talk about it because it's really hard. The culture is different, and it's not what you would expect, like from, I would say, someone from the Western world that will be more open to speaking about things like that happening to them. So being detained and picked out of like those checkpoints is something that can happen any minute, just because while you're crossing from one place to another in Gaza. With all that being said, we've also seen the grandmother that will get shot just because she's walking in the street and like she's trying to flee. So we've also that she was holding her grandchild
Yeah.
in her hand and she was shot dead
Yeah.
in front of everyone. So snipers are not picking based on what they feel as a threat. It is
Yeah.
honestly just based on what these soldiers
What gives them pleasure? It's about what gives them sadistic pleasure, and that's what this is all about. It's sadism, pure sadism.
exactly.
Well, that and what makes them feel powerful. And if they can get away with something incredibly heinous, that just means they can act with even more
Yeah. So
impunity.
all
and
you
feel even
evangelical
more.
supporters of this, take a good look at what's going on.
Yeah, don't even get me started. It's beyond the scope of this conversation because if you start, I won't stop. No, the fact that what we talked about last night is, outside of the checkpoints, you don't really see soldiers because they're ordered to stay in their vehicles.
Yeah.
So, aside from sniper positions, that's what you were saying?
Yes, the interactions with soldiers, like mostly they're scared, especially in the north. So soldiers don't walk around. They're all in like their tanks. They move inside their tanks, based on like what's been happening, because people are sheltering inside their homes, and what's happening in the street is a lot of I don't know if we can call it, like, I don't know if we would say like what's the correct term to what like engaging with the resistance inside the north. So you don't really hear enough stories about the interactions that people will have with these soldiers, because basically if you're having an interaction, we're seeing like right after you had that interaction, we're either seeing you naked
Yeah.
and blindfolded in the street and gone. And then you
Yeah.
talk about it if you come back. Some of them come back, some don't. Or we had someone that some people they actually interact with, and they ask them to cooperate and do something for them, and then they shoot them in the back. Like they're not anybody's friend, basically. Or if you like, and a lot of people said we didn't interact with the soldier, but we know they were in our house. I'm like, how did you know? They're like, we returned to our home and they were using our kitchen, our stuff. They will mess up with the women's clothes. Like they will use their kitchen, and sometimes they will leave behind them some some cans, and you would know because it's in Hebrew. This is something that was left by an Israeli soldier that was using your home,
Yeah.
just to make TikTok videos, or I don't know, upload something to his OnlyFans. I'm not sure why they would like do that a lot, but it's crazy. So and this is not something I can confirm, because it's just something I heard from people. They also say that the food they leave behind them, a lot of people are scared of it because
They could poison it.
they've done that
Yeah.
before, where they poison the food, or they leave like something that can hurt someone or something like that, or like but I haven't seen it myself. But this is what people have been saying, because you can't trust those people.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to power dynamics. Their whole sexual assault. They're blowing up buildings. They're sniping not civilian non-combatants. They're occupying kitchens, cooking food, stealing women's clothing. It's all about power dynamics. That's what it all comes down to. That's the through line to everything. And withholding aid, creating bureaucracy to hold up aid trucks to say that, oh, these need to be searched in a certain way. You need to have the proper forms. All of it is about power dynamics. They have the power to enforce bureaucracy as well. So, yeah, that's what it's all about, and that's.
So yeah, honestly, so they leave you with so many issues to deal with inside Gaza right now. Whether you want people to eat, whether there's infectious disease, and honestly, there's something important that you guys need to know. That based on a report that came out yesterday, aid trucks have been there was a reduction by 50% from aid trucks that were entering from the month of January in the month of February. So while it looks like it is 100% better right now, it's improving and there's more aid coming in. Actually, there's a reduction by 50%, and that's a report by the UN. So the situation is really bad. We're not just hoping for a ceasefire, we're hoping for these people to find something to eat. And the North, really, that this is like the call to action for the North. We all need to be calling for food for the North right now, as part of the things that we're asking Israel to do, because it's just crazy. People are dying from hunger, and we're just watching it while there's food in a small, in almost no distance away from them, but Israel is standing in the middle of that, and they're not allowing food coming even from the south up to the north.
So if we were going to end on a call to action, what do you think people could practically do here in the States or in the West or in other countries that are not
honestly,
involved
it's
in this
important,
conflict?
to do what you can, whatever type of activism you're practicing, whether you're calling your Congress, calling your government, calling your representative. If you're your elected officials, they really care about your vote more than you think. You actually need to be a registered voter. You need to use that power to tell them that you need them to actually take action, to actually put more pressure on the Israeli government to enter the aid in the north. If you're somewhere where you're unable to put pressure on it works. We've pressured Jordan to do an aid drop on social media, and people in the street did so too, and the government responded. Maybe not to the north, but maybe if we push a little bit more, they can get some aid in the north. So I think just speaking about it is important, making sure that the narrative is not changed again, keeping the lead of controlling this narrative and making sure that people know the truth and what's happening on the ground. Going to verified sources that you can trust to ask these questions, not just assume what you're being told is correct. I think we're past that right now, but they still paint things as everything is getting better and things are getting worse. We're just seeing less because the internet is bad. It takes around 20 minutes for each journalist to upload a small, less than a minute video. And not just that, the restriction with Instagram is with one strike or two strikes, now you can't collaborate. So they limit the reach of the content that we should be seeing from us seeing it. And that's something also major that's affecting the fact that because you don't see it, that doesn't mean it's not happening or it's not worse.
Yeah. Zeena, before we wrap up, I just want to ask you one more question. Can you do me a favor and give a quick, segment on what you would say to any parents who may be watching this, who may not be fully aware of this? They may not be familiar with the whole situation and they're just getting bits and pieces. Can you just paint a real quick picture for them as parents who may be living in comfortable conditions with their kids and who care about kids, and to put them in the shoes of a Palestinian mother, Palestinian father?
If you're as a mother too, you're in a situation where if you are pregnant, you're not getting any prenatal care, or you're not getting anybody to make sure that the child you're carrying is in good health. the chances are you're going to go into into labor, and you're not going to be able to get a good care system. So the chances are you or the baby will not make it. If you are, and there's like over 20,000 pregnant women in Gaza. And if you have the child, the chances are there's not even good nutrition for you or the child to have good health, because there's not enough food, there's not enough medicine. If there's any complications in this process, the chances are you are going to lose, you're going to lose your life, or you're going to lose your child. Parents are losing their children over that. And if your child is a little older, they don't even know how to navigate feelings like hunger and stuff like that. They're actually crying nonstop because they need to eat, and you're helpless. You're completely helpless. There's nothing you can do to feed them. And the children who are in age 5 or 6 or 7, they go stand in lines for 3-4 hours to carry a little bit food and bring it back to their families. So as a mother, I'm going to end it with that. As a mother, this is the situation where no child should be in. We can't see our children sick. We can't see them scared. We can't see them cold. We can't see them starving. We can't see them under the threat of being bombed at any minute. I send my child to a school every day in America, and I'm terrified of what might happen to my child just because he goes to school. Now, because, every single day you hear about a school shooting. Now, imagine that. This is your life. Any minute, your life could end with your child. But you can't really make up the time you can't really make up like the time that he's not in school into a good time. The child is not going to school, but at any minute, you guys can be, wiped off the face of the earth. So imagine how all these situations, all the things that you would not accept your child to live in, these are circumstances and situations that every child in Gaza is living. This is like the worst nightmare for any parent to have any child live in these circumstances. So they need to speak up, because they wouldn't allow this to be for their children. So I hope one day they understand that if you love your children so much, you need to give them a better reality, even if you can't relate to it, even if you don't think this will ever happen to you. But you need to look at your children in the eyes one day and say, I did not allow this to happen to another child. And I spoke up when it was happening to another child somewhere else in the world, because I have the power to speak up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I think one thing that people will be motivated by is self-interest. If this can happen somewhere else, it can eventually happen here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you.
guys.
We're going to wrap
you,
up
Zeena.
now, and thank you so much for coming on,
Thank you
explaining
so
the
much
situation
for having me,
for
guys.
us.
I appreciate it.
And Zeena Aqel, everybody. Yeah, and we will link her social media accounts in the description, so you can follow her there and watch her content. All right. Thanks again for listening, folks. We will see you in a couple days.
Thank you.
Signing off.